The atmosphere inside the studio was electric. Global Women's Voices Live, one of the world's most influential televised panels on female empowerment and leadership, had promised a night to remember, and it was already exceeding expectations. The audience, packed with celebrities, activists, influencers, and journalists, waited with bated breath for the panel to begin. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, had been announced as the evening's headliner. Her arrival, dressed in a flawless cream pantsuit with a calm yet confident air, was met with thunderous applause. Meghan took her seat beside the moderator, greeting the other panelists with the polished grace that had become her signature. She was used to high-profile appearances and knew how to control a narrative, how to present herself as both regal and relatable. For the first 10 minutes, she stole the spotlight, delivering polished responses about reclaiming one's voice, redefining womanhood, and challenging systems of oppression. The audience nodded along, hanging on every word. But then came the moment no one had predicted. The host, with a knowing smile, looked toward the wings of the stage. And joining us now, a surprise guest, Academy Award-winning actress, humanitarian, and longtime UN Special Envoy, Angelina Jolie. The audience erupted in applause and surprise. Cameras flashed. Even some panelists looked stunned. Meghan, for a brief second, lost her composure. Her lips parted slightly in disbelief, her hands fidgeted in her lap. The two women had never appeared together publicly, though rumors of mutual disdain had long simmered in the tabloids. They were often compared, both powerful, beautiful, famous women using their platforms to push causes forward. But their methods, and their motives, were worlds apart. Angelina strode confidently onto the stage, dressed in a simple black gown, minimal makeup, and her trademark calm intensity. She offered Meghan a polite nod and handshake, not cold, but distant, and took her seat at the far end of the panel. The conversation resumed, now with an undercurrent of tension the audience could feel. At first, the discussion remained civil. Meghan spoke about the trauma of fame, the scrutiny of the British media, and the importance of controlling one's story. She described her work with girls in underserved communities, particularly through the Archewell Foundation. Angelina listened quietly, occasionally scribbling notes, occasionally glancing in Meghan's direction with unreadable expression. Then, the moderator asked a pointed question. In a world where platforms are more powerful than ever, how do we differentiate between visibility and real impact? That was when Angelina leaned forward, voice calm but razor sharp. I think we have to be brutally honest about the difference between advocacy and self-promotion. Influence without sacrifice is branding. We can't confuse media exposure with genuine impact. One doesn't need a Netflix special or a podcast to change lives, you just need to show up and do the work. The studio went still. The moderator hesitated. Are you referring to? I'm speaking generally, Angelina interjected smoothly, eyes locked forward. But we live in a time where some people walk away from privilege, claiming to be victims of a system, then turn around and build an empire profiting from that narrative. That's not courage. That's strategy. Meghan visibly stiffened. Her smile froze. The audience shifted in their seats. The cameras caught it all. Trying to regain control, Meghan cleared her throat and responded, with respect, my journey has been about survival, motherhood, and using the tools available to me to create change. Every woman's experience is valid. Including mine. Angelina's expression didn't change. And I respect every woman's experience. But I believe we must hold ourselves to a higher standard. Especially when we're given a platform most women could only dream of. The point of stepping into that space should be to spotlight others, not to keep shining it on ourselves. A hush fell across the studio. Meghan opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her rehearsed lines, her usual talking points, they all evaporated in the face of the moment's raw authenticity. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even cruel. But it was devastatingly clear. Angelina hadn't come to argue. She had come to challenge, to speak truth in a room full of applause. And for the first time in a long time, Meghan Markle was speechless. Backstage, the air was thick with silence. Meghan Markle's team circled her like a protective wall, whispering urgently, checking phones, crafting statements before she had even caught her breath. Her usually radiant composure had dimmed. The look in her eyes wasn't one of anger, but of realization. Something had shifted in the public perception. She had walked into the studio expecting a celebration of her voice, her journey. She hadn't anticipated being confronted with a mirror. Angelina Jolie, meanwhile, remained on stage. The conversation had resumed with the remaining panelists, and though no one dared revisit the tension directly, its weight hung in the room. The moderator gently redirected the discussion toward global advocacy. Angelina answered with calm authority, discussing her years in refugee camps, her meetings with war survivors, her efforts to lobby world governments for sustainable aid. You don't always need to be liked to be effective, she said. Sometimes, doing the right thing means being unpopular, because you're not playing the game, you're changing the rules. The applause she received was quieter this time, more thoughtful, more respectful. It wasn't celebrity adoration, it was acknowledgement. She wasn't performing, she was embodying. Backstage, Meghan decided not to return to the panel. By the time the show wrapped up, the internet had already detonated. Clips of Angelina's subtle takedown circulated with lightning speed. One side of the internet lauded Angelina as a beacon of real-world activism, an unfiltered voice in a world of curated soundbites. Others rallied behind Meghan, accusing Angelina of gatekeeping humanitarianism and tearing down another woman on live TV. News outlets rushed to publish think pieces. Memes flooded Instagram. Twitter, now X, descended into chaos. That night, Meghan's team released a carefully worded statement to People magazine. The Duchess remains committed to building compassion and equity through storytelling, global advocacy, and community upliftment. Every woman has a unique voice, and every journey deserves respect. It was polished. It was calm. But to many, it sounded defensive. Angelina, by contrast, remained silent. She didn't release a statement. She didn't post on social media. She didn't do interviews. She flew out quietly the next morning, reportedly to meet with local aid organizations in Romania, near the Ukrainian border. A photo surfaced a few days later, Angelina sitting on a cold floor in a dimly lit community center, surrounded by refugee children, no cameras in sight, except for one volunteer who had captured the moment on their phone. And that image did what no amount of spin could counter. People began comparing the two women more intensely than ever, highlighting the stark contrast between Meghan's branded activism and Angelina's on-the-ground presence. Articles broke down their net worths, their media exposure, their philanthropic efforts. Meghan's supporters argued that visibility and platform building were just as important. Angelina's defenders responded that real impact doesn't require a spotlight. Privately, Meghan was shaken. Her entire brand, one she had meticulously curated since leaving the royal family, was being challenged. Not by the press, not by palace insiders, but by another woman. A woman whose words had been calm, measured, and devastatingly effective. Within weeks, Meghan made some changes. She scaled back her public appearances. Her next podcast episode opened with a noticeably more humble tone. She focused more on guests and less on her own experiences. And behind the scenes, her team began quietly reaching out to grassroots organizations, ones without massive PR machines, to collaborate more directly. It was clear she had taken the moment to heart. But Angelina never acknowledged it again. She moved forward as she always had, steadily, quietly, purposefully. She never uttered Meghan's name in interviews. If asked about the event, she simply responded, "I don't believe in personal conflicts on public platforms. My only goal is to help people who don't have a voice." Months passed. The headlines faded. But the impact of that one evening lingered. In the end, it wasn't a feud. It wasn't a scandal. It was a reckoning, a moment when two visions of female leadership clashed under the spotlight. One built on storytelling, branding, and emotional appeal. The other grounded in silence, sacrifice, and slow-burning change. Meghan continued her work. She rebuilt. She refined her message. But in the eyes of many, Angelina Jolie hadn't just spoken that night. She had drawn a line in the sand, and walked away, leaving behind not ashes, but a challenge. A challenge that echoed louder than any applause. And Meghan, speechless though she had been, had heard it.